Joining me now, 3rd District Congressman Steve Womack, fresh off of his GOP renomination from the election on Tuesday. First of all, congratulations to you, Congressman, and thanks for being with us.
Hey, Roby, it's great to be with you. Thank you so much, and greetings from our nation's capital.
I see that over your shoulder there. Your election was a little closer than I had predicted it would be. I don't know what your internal expectations were, but what's your assessment of how the primary turned out for you, and just what's your interpretation of how this race went?
Yeah, well, look, it's an 8-point win is nothing to sneeze about, and I will tell you, while everybody wants to win 60-40 or greater, I also recognize the political climate we're in. Look, people are angry. They're angry with Washington. There's a dysfunctional Congress at work right now. We have the governing majority, but we've been able to move very little. We don't even have all of our appropriation bills finished, and we've got what's going on in Ukraine that's kind of divisive to the party, and there's just a lot of things out there, just angry people. But this is what I noticed about this particular primary, Roby, that surprised me more than anything was a percentage of voter turnout. When you think about it, the voter turnout in my district, my 6 counties, was around 20%. And in my 2 biggest counties, Benton County and Washington County, it was the lowest. It was at 18%. And that's just not who we are. Voters in my district typically turn out. And I think that kept my margins down. That's just my informal analysis of it. When you look at Sebastian and Crawford County, that gave me my highest margins in the 58% range, they had the highest turnout in my district at 22-23%. And then when you look at north of the tunnel at Benton and Washington County, the 2 big counties, they were in 18% range and gave me my lowest margins. But I carried all 6 counties. You have to be pleased with that. And I know that over the last couple of years, I've had to take some pretty tough votes. It's what you sign up for when you come to Congress, and I've taken those tough votes. But look, a win is a win. We'll take it, and we're not going to be in our rearview mirror at all. We're going to be looking through the windshield at what's ahead in the 2024 general election.
Yeah, you got 2 general election opponents, a Libertarian and a Democrat there. Let's move on to the State of the Union address, which was Thursday night. I know you're going to disagree with quite a few of the Biden policies that were outlined there. We'll talk about those, but just give me an overall kind of impression of how you thought the president's, energy was. He gets criticized a lot for his age, and the fact that it was kind of a raucous hall that you guys were in last night. I'm not a big fan of the heckling, but give me your overall impression of the president and just the body of Congress in general.
I've been to, seen, done a lot of things in my life. That was one of them. Look, if the general public was not aware that there was a race brewing for president of the United States, they do now. The president showed up last night. I think he had taken a couple of swigs of 5-hour energy, and he got up on that podium. He didn't even wait for Mike Johnson to introduce him. He just launched right into it. And it was about 67 minutes of fire and brimstone and, touting, his ideas and promoting things that they say that their administration has accomplished. But it's, I wouldn't call it your typical State of the Union address. It was a bit more than that, but still some of the underlying themes were the same. It's an aspirational thing. You just want to go out there and try to put the best spin you can on what's going on. But it doesn't take away from the fact that we've got an unsecure border, and that was mentioned many times last night, referenced many times with some of the outbursts. And then we have high inflation, still inflation that is too high. It's coming down, but it's too high, and it's affecting the kitchen tables of every single household in America. And we've got an unsettled world right now with national security implications just completely all around the globe. Ukraine, Gaza, the saber rattling in the Taiwan Straits, and on and on. So I think people are aware of the fact that that this is going to be an interesting race, and the issues are going to be the issues, and we'll have a full-throated debate on those issues, and we'll pick a president in November, and we'll also pick members of Congress and see who's going to be leading our country as we approach the new Congress in 2025.
Let's pick up on those three issues. We'll take them one at a time. Let's talk about immigration to begin with. The House has passed a bill that is, for all intents and purposes, just languishing in the Senate. The Senate and the White House negotiated a bipartisan bill that is not going to get consideration in the House. I know that there's a lot of conversation that the president could do some executive orders and put some things back in place, but there is some stuff that needs to be legislated. If you're going to have more border security, you got to pay for it. If you're going to have more judges to adjudicate things, you got to pay for those things. What do you think is the potential compromise, if there is even one, that this House and Senate and White House could all agree on?
Well, Roby, given the fact that the issues that affect immigration, not the least of which is the fact that we got people crossing our border every day, pretty much uncontested. That's just my rough math. That's about a 75% issue with America right now. You don't have to be right-leaning or left-leaning to understand the complexities of a failed immigration policy and a broken border system. But I think people understand that. That's why in all my messaging, if you recall, during my campaign, we talked a lot about border security because we tested those messages, and it's universal. It's Republican and Democrat. And that's why a lot of time was spent on it in that speech last night. But the first thing you have to do is you have to have a secure border. And now some of that's border wall, but some of it is also manpower. Some of it's electronic surveillance and drones and what have you. But in the military, we call it defense in depth. And not one thing is probably going to be the panacea for the issue. What you want to do is you want to do a combination of things that allow for you to at least have some semblance of a secure border. And I think when you get that, and we can, when you get that, I think it makes it easier for the American public to embrace some of the other changes that need to take place, whether it's an asylum reform process, a parole process, whether it's any of the visa programs that allow people to come in and work and study and do those kinds of things. All of the reforms that need to take place are easier accomplished if you can understand that your border is pretty much secure and that people that are coming into the country are coming through the ports of entry and doing it the right way. But man, Roby, you know this, we have been dealing with border security issues for decades. And I think at this stage of the game, what I would take would be some incremental progress. Whether it's a remain in Mexico policy only, to me that would be a first down. If you're going to do some asylum reforms or hire more judges and put more CBP border agents on the border, all of those things require funding, which illustrates the need for us to be able to pass appropriation bills and quit relying on continuing resolutions and threatening shutdowns. So all of those things are involved in it, but it begins with securing your border.
And I'm not putting this blame on you, but I'm just telling you how I'm viewing things from this perspective of the body of Congress in general. The Senate Republicans, the Senate Democrats, the White House have negotiated some potential changes to improve the border situation. It didn't even get an airing in the House, allegedly because Donald Trump doesn't want it to go away as a campaign issue. How do you respond to that, and how can you as a member help break through this impasse and find a way to get some communication and dialogue and potential compromise going? It doesn't seem like there's any effort to compromise.
Well, I'm glad you say you're not putting that blame on me, because I am not part of that decision-making process.
Right.
If I were in charge, a lot of these bills that address some of the more important topics facing our country today, I would want to get on the floor just to be able to find where the Congress is on a lot of this, up or down votes. And but that's not the way it works in our Congress. You're not going to put something on the floor unless you can guarantee that it's going to pass if it's something that you support. But I think those are leadership decisions. I'm not terribly engaged in those, but to answer your question, Roby, it's members like me that have to go to leadership and say, hey, we need to be dealing with this, and I've had that, I've expressed some of those feelings as it concerns what's going on in Eastern Europe. I have advised the Speaker of the House to allow Congress to work its will on what we will do or not do as it concerns funding for Ukraine or funding for Israel or funding for the Indo-Pacific region where our pacing threat happens to be. Those are the kinds of things that I am able to do in consultation with our speaker. But he has to make the call. And then we have to, as a body, look at it, debate it, amend it if it needs to be amended, and then take it to an up or down vote. And if it passes, it passes. If it fails, then we kind of know where we are. But that's how I analyze this thing. And immigration is probably exhibit A on our inability to do some of our most important and basic functions.
Exhibit B would be foreign aid, which you're alluding to, particularly the situation in Ukraine. What do you see happening in terms of a resolution on that? What do you want to see done? Do you support, full-fledged support of Ukraine in this? It's not a proxy war, but I mean, we're not sending U.S. troops there. We are the last line of defense in terms of helping Ukraine stop this Russian aggression. I know that has to be a high priority for you.
Well, see, I look at it this way. It is a very strategic part of the world. Ukraine is a breadbasket for Eastern Europe, and Ukraine has accomplished what many people didn't think it could accomplish, and that is survive a few days of conflict with Russia. Now we're well over 2 years into this conflict, and Ukraine is still fighting. We have Arkansas guardsmen that have trained Ukrainian troops to fight Russia. So look, the way I see it is pretty simple. We need to either help them or not help them. And if what's standing in the way is that the Senate package of $90 billion is too much for what we're trying to do for all considerations, then we need to decide where's the sweet spot in Congress. And there is a bipartisan bill that's kind of floating around right now that does military aid only. There's a couple of other pieces of this, Roby, that I think your listeners, your viewers should understand, and that is when we stimulate our defense industrial base in the production of weapons and munitions, we're not just helping Ukraine or Israel, we're helping ourselves, because those stockpiles, our magazine depth is pretty important to us. So keeping those lines running is very important if we're going to be able to continue to have the necessary deterrence for conflict that involves the United States of America. So that's one key consideration. The other thing that I think we all need to think about is, what are other world powers seeing if we're sitting on our hands and not helping? America has always been the country that has supported, because we're a member of NATO, now 32 nations, that we've always been the country that has kind of been that basis of support. And now other countries are joining NATO, and more countries are meeting their 2% GDP threshold for participation. And we do have Article 5 responsibilities if, in fact, Vladimir Putin were to go beyond Ukraine and invade a NATO-aligned country. So I think the strategic importance of America not shrinking from what the rest of the world believes America is and should be doing is also a consideration. So, but we need to have the debate. And I think, if the Senate bill is not going to be good enough, then maybe we can put the $40 billion package on the floor that some of my colleagues in a bipartisan way have suggested. And but we need to move past this moment. We need to do something. And whatever that something happens to be, we'll have the debate when that bill hits the floor.
I'm going to end our conversation here with putting some words in your mouth. It sounds like you agree with President Joe Biden on the U.S.'s role in intervention in Ukraine and support of NATO, and maybe not so much where former President Trump wants to see the United States positioned. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, look, it doesn't make any difference what a president says. I'm a subject matter expert on only one thing, and that's my opinion. And I've got a background of 30 years in uniform. For most of my career, I trained to stop Russia in the Fulda Gap. And so if back in those days when we were training, somebody said, hey, you have an opportunity to help another country execute a conflict against an invading Russia and take them out without committing any U.S. forces, and all they need is a few bullets and some weapons and those kinds of defensive weapons and offensive weapons, we would have taken that deal and never looked back. But times have changed a little bit. These are now political piñatas. People are beating them up every day. They're political footballs. At the end of the discussion, I will tell you that what happens in Eastern Europe is of vital importance to the United States of America. What happens in the Taiwan Straits is of vital importance to the United States of America. What we allow Iran to do or not do as it concerns surrogates and proxies fighting Israel is of extreme importance to the United States of America. We cannot put a wall up around our country and expect the United States of America to survive because the rest of the world could go to you-know-where in a handbasket. And I think it's of vital importance that that the United States of America stand up and be counted and assume its rightful position in the eyes of the rest of the world. The world is watching us every single day. So whether Joe Biden supports it or whether Donald Trump supports it, that's not what's important to me. What's important to me is where should America be in this very important discussion globally.
Always good to get your take, Congressman Steve Womack. He represents the 3rd District of Arkansas. Again, congratulations on your primary victory. We will see you back in state soon.
Thank you, Roby. Always good to be with you.